Clara, how much exactly is left in your account?
Why are you asking me that, Daniel?
Because the card just got declined at the restaurant. In front of my colleagues. In front of Marcos and his wife. Do you understand how that felt?
The card got declined because I moved money to a fixed account. I told you that last week.
You told me nothing. You never tell me anything about your finances. I am your husband.
You are my husband, Daniel, not my accountant.
I just need to know what we are working with, Clara. That is all I am asking.
We are fine. Go to sleep.
We are fine. That is what you always say. We are fine. But I am the one sitting in that restaurant watching Marcos's wife refill her wine glass and wondering if my own wife has forgotten she married a man with a reputation to protect.
Your reputation.
Yes.
Not us. Not our life. Your reputation.
He did not answer that. And Clara lay in the dark beside her husband of 7 months and felt something she had not yet let herself name. Something that had been gathering quietly in the space between them since the wedding. Since before the wedding, if she was honest. Since the first time she noticed how differently he spoke about her when her Uncle Raymond was in the room. She closed her eyes. She had a decision to make. And she had already, without knowing it, begun to make it.
Stay with me, because this is not a story about a marriage that failed. This is a story about a woman who needed to know the truth before she could decide anything. A woman who had been loved for the wrong reasons for long enough that she had almost forgotten what the right reasons felt like. And a man who was about to discover that the thing he had married was not the thing he thought. And that discovery was going to ask him a question he did not know was coming. If you have ever loved someone and wondered in the quiet part of the night whether they would still be there if the number in your account changed, stay with me, because this story is about that wondering and what one woman decided to do about it. Let me tell you who Clara was before I tell you what she did. Her full name was Clara Adane Ose. 34 years old, Ghanaian British, born in Accra, raised in Croydon from the age of 9 when her mother, a nurse named Patricia, moved the family to London for a better chance at a better version of everything. Clara had been, from the beginning, her mother's daughter in the most complete way. Practical, careful, organized the way women are organized when they understand early that no one is going to come and sort things out for them. She studied accounting because numbers made sense to her in a way that people sometimes did not. She worked at a mid-sized financial consultancy in Canary Wharf. She was not a partner. She was precise and competent and paid a salary that was good without being the kind of good that made news. She also had Uncle Raymond. Uncle Raymond was her mother's older brother, a man who had come to London in 1987 with £40 and a belief in himself so absolute it had compelled the world to agree with him. He had built a small property empire in southeast London over 30 years. Not a loud empire, not the kind that got profiled in magazines, but the kind that meant he owned 12 residential properties outright and collected rent every month with the calm of a man who had done the hard part already. Uncle Raymond had no children. He had a bad hip, a good tailor, and a habit of turning up to family events in cars that made people go quiet for a moment before the conversation resumed. He loved Clara the way people love the child in a family who reminds them of themselves. He had paid for the last 2 years of her university. He had co-signed her first flat. And 6 years ago, at Christmas dinner, he had made an announcement that had changed the temperature of the room. "When I go," he said, in the unhurried way of a man discussing something administrative, "this goes to Clara. All of it. She is the one who understands what it costs." He had not said it to embarrass anyone. He had said it because it was simply what he intended, and Raymond had never seen the point of secrecy where intentions were concerned. Clara had not asked for it. She had not expected it. She had been genuinely uncomfortable with it for about 3 weeks, and then had set it aside in the part of her mind where she put things she could not currently act on, and continued going to work and paying her own bills and living her own life. But the words had gone out into the world, and the world had heard them. She met Daniel at a friend's birthday dinner in the spring of the year she turned 33. He was tall in the way that registers before anything else. Dark suit, no tie, the kind of easy confidence that comes either from money or from having decided very early that you were going to carry yourself as if you had it. His name was Daniel Carr. Mixed race British, his mother from Barbados, his father from Exeter. He worked in sales. Good at it, clearly. The kind of man who could make a table of 8 feel like they were the most interesting people he had encountered all week.
He had sat across from her at dinner and asked her what she did, and actually listened to the answer, which was unusual enough to be noteworthy. He had called her the next day. He had taken her to a restaurant that was genuinely good rather than merely expensive, which told her something. He had remembered that she mentioned her mother was a nurse and asked about her. He had made her laugh twice before the main course arrived, and once more at the door of her building when the evening ended. And she thought, standing there in the April cold, that this might be something. It was something. For 8 months, it was something real. He was attentive without being suffocating, funny without trying too hard. He showed up when he said he would, and called when he said he would, and looked at her in public the way she had privately always wanted to be looked at. She introduced him to her mother. Patricia liked him, which mattered more than Clara would have admitted. She introduced him to Uncle Raymond at a family lunch in October. She noticed, because Clara noticed things, that Daniel was different with Raymond. Not impolite, not obvious, just more attentive, more interested, more engaged. He asked Raymond 3 questions about his properties and listened to the answers with the specific quality of attention that people give to information they intend to use later. She noticed it. She folded it away. She told herself it was natural, that men were like that with successful older men, that it meant nothing. She was not sure she believed herself, but she loved him, or something that felt like love.
And love asks you to give people the benefit of the doubt until the doubt becomes too heavy to carry. He proposed in January, a Saturday morning. No restaurant, no elaborate staging. He made her coffee the way she liked it, sat across from her at her kitchen table, and put a ring in the middle of the table between the cups. "I don't want to make a speech," he said. "I just want to know if you want to do this with me." She looked at the ring. She looked at him. She said, "Yes." And she meant it. That is the part that matters. She meant it completely. Whatever else was true, that was true. They married in May. 60 people.
Her mother in yellow, Raymond in a grey suit that cost more than the catering. The first months were good. Not perfect. Marriages never begin perfectly, but good. They found a rhythm. They negotiated the small things, the television volume and the grocery schedule and whose turn it was to call the landlord about the boiler. They were building something. Clara could feel it being built. And then the questions started. They came gradually, the way weather changes. So slowly you don't notice until you are already cold.
Did Raymond mention anything about the Lewisham property? I was thinking if he ever wanted a co-investor on something. What is the yield on properties in his portfolio, roughly? You must have some idea. My colleague is looking for a good financial advisor, someone who handles high net worth clients. Does Raymond use anyone you'd recommend? Always Raymond, always money adjacent, always framed as casual, as practical, as reasonable. And Clara answered, because what was she going to say? She answered and watched and waited for the feeling in her chest to settle. It did not settle. The restaurant incident was the 5th of December. The declined card, the colleagues, the reputation comment in the dark. She lay awake that night for a long time.
She was a woman who worked in finance. She understood numbers. She understood what people did when they wanted something. And she understood what people did when they loved someone. And she had, in the 7 months since her wedding, developed a private and growing fear that she had confused these two things in the person sleeping beside her. She needed to know. Not for the satisfaction of being right, not for revenge. She needed to know the way you need to know whether the ground beneath your feet is solid before you take the next step. Because if she was wrong, she could let this go and love him fully and without the shadow of it. And if she was right, she needed to know that too. Because knowing was the only way to decide anything. She had a plan by morning.
Now, let me tell you something before we go further. Clara was not a vengeful person. She was not cruel. She did not do what she did next because she wanted to hurt Daniel. She did it because she had learnt from years of working with numbers and the people who chased them that the truest thing about a person is not what they say when everything is fine. It is what they do when the number changes. She was about to change the number. And then she was going to watch. She called Uncle Raymond on a Thursday morning from her office. Raymond listened without interrupting, which was one of his great qualities. When she finished, there was a pause. You want me to what exactly? I want you to let it be known, quietly, through the family, that the situation has changed, that you have decided to restructure the estate, that for tax reasons, the properties are going into a trust, and the trust is not Clara's. Another pause. Clara, I know. You want me to pretend to cut you out of my will. I want to see what happens. Raymond was quiet for a moment. She could hear him breathing. She could almost hear him thinking. And if nothing happens, if he is exactly who you hope he is, then no one was hurt and I have my answer. And if he is not? Clara looked out of her office window at the grey December sky over Canary Wharf. Then I have my answer too. And I would rather have it now than in 10 years. Raymond was quiet for a moment longer. Then he said, You are your mother's daughter. And you are my niece. Both of those things make you exceptionally difficult to argue with. Is that a yes? That is a yes. A bit. Clara. Yes. I hope you are wrong about him. So do I, Uncle Raymond. So do I. The news moved the way family news moves. Not an announcement. A comment at a cousin's birthday. A low-voiced conversation between aunts at church. A message passed through Patricia that reached Daniel through the particular ecosystem of a family's social life within 2 weeks. Clara watched.
At first, nothing obvious. Daniel was the same. Attentive. Present. She told herself she was wrong. She told herself she had punished a good man for a suspicion and felt the guilt of it settle in her chest. Then, the temperature shifted. It happened in small degrees. He was home later. Not dramatically later. 20 minutes. 40 minutes. He had his phone face down on the table now, in a way he hadn't before. He was tired more often. Distracted in conversations. Present in the room, but not quite in the room with her. She asked once, gently, "Is everything okay? You seem somewhere else." "I am fine. Work is busy." He said it the way people say it when they want the conversation to stop.
She noticed something else. He stopped asking about Raymond. Entirely. The questions that had been so consistent, so reliable, so much a part of their weekly conversation that she had begun to map them like a weather pattern. They stopped. Not tapered. Stopped. As though a door had been closed on a particular room. She sat with what that meant. She was not ready to sit with what it meant. It was her friend Grace who told her about Rebecca. Grace was Clara's oldest friend. 20 years of knowing each other, which meant Grace had earned the right to say the thing that needed to be said with minimum softening. She said it on a Saturday afternoon, over tea in Clara's kitchen. "I am going to tell you something, and I need you to not react until I finish." Clara set down her cup. "Tell me." "I saw Daniel Wednesday evening in Shoreditch with a woman I don't know. They were at a table in the back, not the kind of table. They were at a table in the back, not the kind of table you sit at with a colleague. The kind of table you specifically choose because you don't want to be seen." Clara looked at Grace. "I sat with it for 3 days before I called you," Grace said. "I am sorry I didn't call you sooner. I kept hoping I'd misread it." "What did she look like?" Grace described her. Clara did not know the face. She nodded once, very slowly, and picked up her tea. "Clara, I'm fine. You don't have to be fine right now. I know." She looked at her hands. "I think I already knew. I think some part of me already knew, and I wanted to be wrong." Grace reached across the table and held her hand and did not say anything else. That was the right thing to do. Grace had always known when to stop talking. That evening, Clara sat in her bathroom for a long time. Not crying, or not only crying. Thinking. Going back through everything. The restaurant questions. The phone face down. The missing Raymond questions. The 20 extra minutes. The room that had never felt entirely warm since December. She had built a test to find the truth. The truth had found her first. She did not confront him that night, or the next. She needed to be sure. Not because she doubted Grace. She trusted Grace with her life. But because she needed to be the kind of sure where you have no remaining questions. The kind of sure where whatever you decide next, you decide it with all of the information. She hired someone, a man named Tom, a private investigator whose card she had once been given at a work conference for reasons she had never imagined being relevant. She called him on a Monday morning. She gave him Daniel's name and the name of his workplace. She asked him to find out what could be found. She felt sick making the call. She made it anyway. Tom came back to her in 5 days. She sat in her car in the car park of her office building and read the report on her phone. Her hands were steady.
She had spent 34 years making her hands steady in moments that wanted to make them shake. Daniel had been seeing Rebecca Marsh for 4 months. Since August. Since 2 months after the wedding.
There was more. Tom was thorough. Daniel had a loan he had not disclosed, a significant one, from a private lender, taken out 18 months ago, around the time he had begun dating Clara. The loan was at a rate that suggested some urgency. Tom had also, through sources Clara did not ask about and did not want to know, found a message. A screenshot from a conversation between Daniel and a friend named Lee, sent in the February before their wedding. The message read, "She's not flashy about it, but the uncle is loaded. Property all over Southeast London. She's in the will. I've met her a few times now. She's good, decent girl. I think this could work." Clara read it twice. She put her phone face down on the passenger seat, exactly the way Daniel had been putting his. She sat in the car park for 11 minutes. She counted them. Then she picked up the phone. She called Uncle Raymond. "I have my answer," she said. Raymond was quiet. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "Don't be sorry yet. I'm not finished." "Drop one word in the comments right now. Just one word for what you are feeling as you are reading this about Daniel. Just one word. We will come back to it at the end." She called a meeting. Not a confrontation, a meeting. Clara thought in structures, and she needed this to have a structure because structure was what kept her upright when the feeling beneath the structure wanted to pull her down. She asked Daniel to come to her mother's house on a Saturday afternoon. She asked Uncle Raymond to be there. She told Daniel it was a family conversation about some financial planning, which was true in its way. He came. He wore a good jacket. He shook Raymond's hand with both of his, the warm double handshake of a man performing goodwill, and sat in Patricia's sitting room on the sofa with the good cushions. Clara sat across from him. Patricia sat in the corner with tea she was not drinking. Raymond stood near the window because Raymond always stood near windows. Clara spoke first. "I need to tell you some things, Daniel, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. Can you do that?" He looked at her. Something shifted slightly in his expression. Not much. He was good at faces, but she knew this face. Of course. Uncle Raymond's estate is not changing. There was never a restructure. I asked him to let that information circulate to see what would happen. She paused. "I wanted to see what you would do when you thought the money was gone." The room was quiet. Patricia set down her cup very gently. "I also want you to know that I know about Rebecca." Something moved across Daniel's face that was not quite an expression. More like the thing underneath an expression, when the expression fails. "And I want you to know," Clara said, her voice entirely level, "that I know about the loan. And I know about the message to Lee. And I know about the message to Lee in February of last year." She did not say which message. She did not need to. She watched his face confirm what the message had said. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. Then, "Clara, I asked you not to respond yet." He closed his mouth. "I did not do any of this to humiliate you. I want to be very clear about that. I did it because I loved you. I genuinely loved you, Daniel. And I needed to know whether what was happening between us was real. Whether the person I was building a life wanted the life, or wanted what he thought came attached to it." She folded her hands in her lap. "You have now told me, without saying a word, exactly what I needed to know." Daniel looked at the floor, then at Raymond.
Raymond looked back at him with the expression of a man who has seen enough of the world to be unsurprised by any of it, but is not therefore unbothered.
I want to know one thing, Clara said. And I want you to tell me the truth. Not because it will change anything, but because you will have to live with whichever version of this you choose to give me. She looked directly at him. Did you ever love me? Even a small part of it? Was any of it real? The longest silence in the room. Daniel looked up. His eyes were wet. She had not expected that, and she watched it the way you watch something you're not sure is true. Yes, he said. His voice was different, quieter. Something stripped of the performance of it. Not at the beginning. Not when I asked Lee to introduce us. But somewhere in the middle of it, it stopped being what I told myself it was and became something else. And I did not know what to do with that, so I kept doing what I had been doing. And then I had gone so far that I didn't know how to go back. Clara looked at him for a long time. That, she said finally, is the saddest thing you have said to me in 8 months of marriage. He nodded. Not because it was not real, but because you had something real and you did not trust it enough to put down the other thing. He had no answer for that. There was no answer for it. She filed for divorce in March. Not angrily, the way she did most things, carefully, with a solicitor she had chosen based on reviews and recommendations, not emotion. The paperwork was uncomplicated because she had always kept her finances separate, and there was nothing entangled that could not be cleanly separated. Daniel did not contest it. He called her once, 2 weeks after the papers were served. She answered because she had decided she would always answer if he called, because she did not want to be the kind of person who needed the last word to feel finished. I want to say I'm sorry, he said. Not because it changes anything, just because it's true. I believe you, she said. A pause. Are you okay? I will be. Clara. His voice was the quiet version, the real one. For what it's worth, the part that was real was the best part of my life. She sat with that for a moment. Then, I hope you figure out how to lead with that next time, she said. Goodbye, Daniel. She hung up and sat in the silence of her flat, the one she had moved back into, and allowed herself to feel the full weight of it for exactly as long as she needed to. Then she got up, put the kettle on, and called her mother. There is a particular kind of grief that does not announce itself loudly. It is not the grief of disaster or catastrophe. It is the grief of realizing that something you believed was one thing was partly another thing. And it sits differently in the body, heavier in some places, lighter in others. Because alongside the loss, there is a relief. The relief of knowing. The relief of not living inside a question anymore. Clara went back to her flat and her job and her life. The small, steady life she had always been building with her own hands. And she let herself grieve the marriage properly. Not quickly, not neatly. She had bad weeks. Weeks where she woke up at 3 in the morning and lay in the dark and felt the absence of someone beside her, even someone who had not been entirely who she thought. Grief does not require perfection in its subject. It only requires that you loved. She cried, she talked to Grace, she talked to her mother. She walked along the Thames on Sunday mornings and let herself be in it. She was not broken. That was the important thing. Bruised in places that would take time to stop hurting, but not broken. Because Clara had always known, at the deepest level of what she understood about herself, that she was not the kind of woman who could be finished by this. She met someone the following year, not looking, in the way you meet people when you are not looking, which is the only way you actually meet anyone. His name was Mark. He taught secondary school history in Lewisham. Not wealthy, not from money. Rented a flat with a kitchen that was slightly too small and books everywhere. The kind of books that are on shelves and also on floors and also on the coffee table, because there was not enough shelf space for the number of books a person like that accumulates. He had met her at a friend's birthday dinner. He had sat across from her and asked what she did and actually listened. And she had thought, standing at the door of her building at the end of the evening, that this might be something. He called the next day.
He took her to a restaurant that was genuinely good, but not expensive, which told her something. He asked about her mother, whose name he had remembered from the first conversation. On their third date, over dinner at the kitchen table in his slightly too small flat, he said, without preamble, "I should tell you that I am not someone with money. I have a pension, a flat I can't afford to buy, and a significant number of books. I want to be clear about that early, so you are not under any misapprehension." Clara looked at him across the table. "Why are you telling me that?" "Because it seems like the right thing to say before this becomes something. Some people care about that kind of thing, and they are entitled to. I would rather you know now." She looked at him for a long moment. "Mark," she said. "Yes? I don't care about that." "Okay." "I mean it. I actually don't care about that at all." "Okay." He picked up his fork. "That is useful information. Thank you for telling me." She laughed. A real one. The kind that surprised her. She was still laughing when she reached for her glass. And Mark, not making a performance of it, was smiling at the table. Because this woman's laugh was genuinely one of the best things he had had in some time. And he was the kind of man who knew when something was worth paying attention to. They were together for 2 years before he asked her. He asked at his kitchen table. A Sunday morning. Coffee the way she liked it, placed in front of her before he sat down. No ring on the table yet. He looked at her across the cups. "I want to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond." She recognized those words. She felt them in a place that had been tender for a long time. "I know what I am," he said. "I know what I have. I know what I don't have, and what I'm unlikely to ever have. I am not a man who is going to make your life more financially comfortable than you can make it yourself. I have thought a great deal about whether that matters, and I have concluded that it matters less than this." He put both hands flat on the table between them. "I love you. Not what comes with you or what might come with you or who you know or what you might inherit someday. You specifically. This specific person who calls her mother every Sunday and keeps a spreadsheet of her books and cries at documentaries about animals and makes excellent coffee and notices when someone is sad before they have said anything. That is the person I love. That is all I am asking to spend my life with." Clara sat with her coffee cup in her hands. She was not going to cry. She was 36 years old, and she had survived things, and she was not going to cry at a kitchen table in Lewisham. She cried at a kitchen table in Lewisham. Mark did not make a thing of it. He got up and got her a piece of kitchen roll because there was no tissue box nearby, which made her laugh through the crying in a way that only made the crying worse for a moment and then made it better. "Is that a yes?" he said, sitting back down. That is a yes, she said. And she meant it completely, in the way you can only mean something when you know exactly what it cost to get to it. Uncle Raymond came to the wedding. He wore grey again. Different suit, same quality. He gave a speech that was shorter than anyone expected and better than anything anyone could have prepared. He said, "I have watched my niece build a life with her own hands her entire life. Today, she has chosen a man who did not come for what the hands had built. That is how you know." He sat down. 14 people in the room were crying. Clara was not one of them, because she had promised herself she would hold it together for the speech, and she was a woman who kept her promises. She held Mark's hand under the table and felt for the first time in a long time that the ground beneath her feet was exactly as solid as she had always needed it to be. Mark found out about Raymond's estate 2 years into the marriage, not because Clara hid it, but because it simply had not come up in any significant way. They were in the car coming back from a family lunch when he asked casually what Raymond actually owned, because he had mentioned Lewisham, and Mark had thoughts about Lewisham, having lived there for years. Clara told him the properties, the will, the whole of it. Mark was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That is wild. Raymond is essentially a property mogul in disguise. He prefers the term quiet investor." That is a very Raymond way to describe it. He drove for a moment. Does any of that come to you eventually? Most of it, yes. Raymond has no children, and I'm the one who understands what it costs. Mark nodded. He drove another half a mile. Good, he said. You should be the one who has it. You'll know what to do with it. He indicated left. Should we stop and get groceries? Or did you say your mother was sending food? She looked at him driving. This man with his books on every surface, and his slightly too small kitchen, and his secondary school history classes, and his total absence of interest in the number Raymond had put in her future. She's sending food, Clara said. Excellent. I've been thinking about her jollof since Thursday. And that was it. That was the whole of it. They stopped at nothing and drove home and ate Patricia's jollof at the kitchen table with the books on every surface. And the evening was entirely ordinary and entirely full. And Clara thought about a woman lying in a dark bedroom 7 months after a wedding, feeling something she could not yet name. She had named it now, and she had put it down. And she was home. Before we go, I have 3 questions for you. 1. When Clara set up the test, when she asked Raymond to let the news circulate, was that fair? Was that wisdom? Or was that a trap? And does the answer change depending on what Daniel turned out to be? 2. Daniel said that somewhere in the middle of it, the real thing had grown up inside the calculated thing, and he had not known how to put down one to keep the other. Do you believe him? And if you do, does believing him change anything? 3. And this is the one to sit with longest. Is there someone in your life right now, a person you love or have loved, where some part of you has always wondered which part of you they are actually there for? The you that exists, or the things that exist around you? And what would you discover if the number changed? Drop your answers in the comments below. We do not judge here. We talk, we grow, we learn from women who tested the ground before they built on it. Tell us where you are watching from. City, country. This is your storyteller. Every story is a mirror.
Every ending is a door. If this one found you today, it was meant to. Subscribe to Tales of Africa Studio. Now go and tell someone the true thing. For every woman who has loved carefully in a world that does not always deserve it. See you in my next video.